Think about the person you love most right now. Maybe it's a partner, a best friend, a family member. Now ask yourself honestly, do they treat you as well as you treat them? Do they show up for you the way you show up for them? Or is there a quiet imbalance you've been trying not to look at too closely? Here's the uncomfortable truth Machiavelli figured out over 500 years ago, and that modern psychology is now confirming. The more you love someone without conditions, the more likely they are to take you for granted. Not because they're evil, not because they don't care, but because of something deeply wired into human nature. And today, we're going to break it all the way down. Part 1. The pattern you know but won't admit. Let me paint you a picture. There's someone in your life, and you would do anything for them. You answer their calls at midnight. You rearrange your schedule when they need you. You remember the little things. You check in, you pour in. And then, there's the way they treat you. Canceled plans, slow replies, half-hearted effort. You're always the one initiating. You're always the one apologizing first. You're always the one making sure things are okay between you two. And you tell yourself, that's just how they are. Or, I love them, so I don't mind. Or the worst one, at least they know I'll always be there. Yes, they do know that. And that's exactly the problem. Here's something I want you to sit with for a second. Think about the people in your life who treat you the best, who show up consistently, who are genuinely thoughtful toward you. Now think, how much do you chase those people? How anxious are you about losing them? And now think about the people who keep you up at night, the ones you overanalyze, the ones you make excuses for, the ones whose approval you're quietly desperate for. Notice anything? The ones you value most are often the ones who give you the least certainty. This is not a coincidence. This is human nature operating exactly as designed. And Machiavelli, writing in 1513 in a cold Florentine prison, described this dynamic so precisely it's almost disturbing. He wrote, "Men are so simple and so much creatures of circumstance that the deceiver will always find someone ready to be deceived." Now, before you bristle at that, he wasn't talking about con artists. He was talking about all of us. In every relationship we've ever had, we are wired to respond to uncertainty, to chase what withholds, to protect what feels scarce. And when someone gives us unconditional love, unconditional availability, unconditional loyalty, our nervous system doesn't register it as precious. It registers it as permanent, fixed, already mine. And we all know what happens to things we think will always be there. We stop appreciating them. Part 2. The loved versus feared dilemma. Apply to your relationships. Machiavelli's most famous question was this: is it better to be loved or to be feared? Now, most people hear that and immediately think politics, kings, armies, power. But I want you to bring that question all the way home, into your apartment, your DMs, your dinner table. Because Machiavelli's answer was not be feared. People misquote him constantly on this. His actual answer was, it is far safer to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. That word, safer, is everything. He wasn't saying love is bad. He was saying that love, without any counterbalance, makes you vulnerable in a way that quietly destroys relationships. Here's why. When someone knows, and with absolute certainty, that you love them unconditionally, your love stops being something they work for. It becomes something they consume. Think about that person who texts you back in 30 seconds, every time, no matter what. Now think about that person who takes hours, sometimes a day, and when they do reply, you feel this little rush. Which one do you think about more? I'm not proud of the answer either, but it's the truth. Machiavelli understood that certainty kills desire, that availability breeds invisibility. When you are always there, fully, warmly, unconditionally, you train the other person's nervous system to stop registering your presence as something valuable. You become the couch, comfortable, always available, taken for granted, and the person who keeps them slightly on their toes, slightly uncertain, Who has their own life, their own standards, their own limits? That person gets called mysterious, gets called interesting, gets pursued. It sounds unfair. It is unfair, honestly, but fairness doesn't change how humans work. Part 3, the science behind why we do this. More curious tone, like you're figuring this out together. Here's where it gets really interesting, because this isn't just philosophy. Modern psychology backs this up completely. Psychologists call it intermittent reinforcement. It's the same mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive. You don't get a reward every time. You get it sometimes, unpredictably. And that unpredictability doesn't make you give up. It makes you more committed to pulling the lever. Now apply that to a person. If someone makes you feel amazing every single time you're with them, that's wonderful. But your brain adapts. It normalizes. The emotional high becomes the baseline. But if someone makes you feel amazing sometimes, and then pulls back, and then comes back, and then disappears again, your brain doesn't adapt. It becomes obsessed. It stays in a constant state of low-level craving. Checking the phone, replaying conversations, wondering what you did wrong. This is not love. This is your nervous system being hijacked. But here's the brutal irony. It feels more intense than real love. It mimics passion, it mimics chemistry, it mimics depth. So we chase it, and we call it connection. Meanwhile, the person who consistently shows up for us, who is genuinely kind, who never plays games, we describe them as sweet, reliable, a good friend. And somehow, without realizing it, we start treating them like furniture. Machiavelli would look at all of this and nod slowly. He wrote that men are driven not by what they have, but by what they fear losing. And when you give everything freely, with no conditions, with no limits, there is nothing left to fear losing. The relationship loses its gravity. Part 4, how this shows up in friendship. I want to talk about friendship for a second, because we always focus on romantic relationships, but this dynamic is just as brutal in friendships. You know that friend who you'd drop anything for? You've helped them move apartments. You've listened to their breakup stories for hours. You've lent money you weren't sure you'd get back. You've shown up again and again and again. And somehow, you're not the person they call when they have good news. You're not the first person on the invite list for the fun stuff. You're the person they call when things fall apart. The cleanup crew, the emotional support, the constant. And you love them. So you tell yourself it's fine, but it's not fine. And somewhere deep down, you know it. Here's what happened. You trained them. Not intentionally, not out of weakness. You did it out of love. But every time you showed up with no reciprocal expectation, you communicated at the level of behavior, which is the only level that actually matters, that your time, your energy, your presence has no cost. And humans, all of us, not just your friend, are wired to unconsciously devalue what has no cost. Machiavelli was blunt about this. Generosity exercised in a way that does not bring you the reputation for it will harm you. He wasn't saying be selfish. He was saying that generosity without limits, without acknowledgement, without any sense of mutual investment, doesn't create gratitude. It creates expectation. And expectation is the grave of appreciation. Part 5, the turning point. What actually creates respect. This is the shift. More empowered, grounded tone. So what do you do with all of this? Because I know what you might be thinking. So I should be cold? Play games? Pretend I don't care? No, that's not what this is. Machiavelli wasn't advising cruelty. He was advising self-possession. There is a massive difference. Let me give you the distinction that changes everything. Love freely, but never love at the cost of your own standards. You can be warm. You can be generous, you can be deeply loyal, and you can have expectations, and you can have limits, and you can have a life that exists outside of this person. These things are not contradictions, but somewhere along the way, many of us, especially those of us who grew up equating love with sacrifice, Started believing that real love means giving without limit. It doesn't. Real love, the kind that lasts, the kind that generates genuine mutual respect, has shape, it has edges, it has a self at the center of it. And here's the thing Machiavelli understood that most people still don't. Respect is not given to those who need it most. It's given to those who seem to need it least. When you are so hungry for someone's approval, so anxious about their perception of you, so willing to twist yourself into whatever shape they need, they feel that hunger, and it repels them. Not because they're cruel, but because desperation signals a kind of powerlessness that humans are not attracted to, even when they love the person. But when you have your own life, when you have standards you actually enforce, when you're warm but not desperate, when you can walk away if something isn't right for you, everything changes. The dynamic shifts without a word being said. Machiavelli wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Replace ruler with person and men with relationships. Because who you allow in your life and on what terms you allow them, that communicates everything about how you see yourself. When you enforce no terms, you communicate, 'I don't believe I deserve terms,' and the people around you will believe exactly what you communicate." Part 6. The practical shift. How to change the dynamic. Grounded, practical, like a mentor talking directly to the viewer. So let's get real practical, because theory without action is just entertainment. Here are the actual shifts that change how people treat you, without games, without cruelty, without pretending to be someone you're not. First one, stop being so available. Not as a tactic, as a reality. Actually build a life that fills your time. Pursue things that matter to you. Have plans. Have people. When someone wants your attention, make it something they're fitting into a life that is already full, not a void they're filling. Availability isn't loving. It's actually a little frightening when you think about it. A person with no life of their own who orbits entirely around you, that's not warmth, that's pressure. Second, let your yes mean something. If you say yes to everything, your yes is worth nothing. Start saying no, genuinely, not manipulatively. Say no when you don't want to do something. Say no when you're tired. Say no when it doesn't serve you. Your yes becomes a gift again, and gifts have value precisely because they're not guaranteed. Third, stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault. This one is quiet but enormous. People who over-apologize train others to see them as the problem. You apologize first, you absorb blame that isn't yours, you smooth over conflicts to keep the peace, and the other person learns, I don't have to manage this. They'll manage it for me. Let tension exist sometimes. You don't have to fix every uncomfortable moment. Let people feel the weight of their own behavior. Fourth, communicate what matters to you and enforce it. Not with anger, not with ultimatums. Calmly, clearly, once. When you cancel on me last minute like that, it doesn't feel great. And then, this is the key part, you watch what they do next, not what they say, what they do. Machiavelli was ruthless about this. Judge people by their actions, never their intentions. Anyone can say, I'm sorry, I'll do better. The question is whether the behavior changes. If it doesn't, you now have information, and what you do with that information is where your self-respect lives. Fifth, become someone you respect. This is the deepest one, and it's the one most people skip because it's the hardest. You cannot demand respect from others for a version of yourself you don't respect. If you are giving endlessly because somewhere inside you believe that's the only reason someone would want to keep you around, that belief is the problem, and no relationship strategy will fix it until you address it. You are not a service. You are not a convenience. You are not the backup plan. You are a person with a full interior life, genuine needs, and things to offer that are worth someone's consistent effort. Start acting like it. Part 7. The real lesson. Here's what I want to leave you with. Machiavelli has been called cold, calculating, immoral, but I think he was just honest about something most people find too uncomfortable to face. Human beings respond to the world as it actually is, not as it should be. And in the world as it actually is, love without self-respect doesn't produce gratitude. It produces entitlement. In the world as it actually is, constant availability doesn't produce appreciation. It produces invisibility. In the world as it actually is, giving without limits doesn't produce closeness. It produces distance. None of this means you should stop loving people deeply. It means you should love people deeply and value yourself just as deeply. Because here's the truth that changes everything. The person who finally treats you the way you deserve won't be the person you chase. It'll be the person who sees that you have standards, that you have edges, that you are someone worth pursuing, not someone who pursues. And the relationships that last, the ones built on genuine mutual respect, they don't happen between two people where one gives everything and the other takes it. They happen between two people who each bring a self-worth showing up for. That is the real lesson Machiavelli was teaching. Not how to be feared, how to be valued. If this hit close to home, it means you needed to hear it. And the fact that it hit close to home means you are someone who loves deeply. That's not a flaw, that's a gift. But gifts need to be protected, including the gift of yourself. Drop a comment below. I want to know, is there someone in your life right now that you've been giving more than you're getting? You don't have to name them. Just say yes. And if this video helped you see something you hadn't seen before, share it with someone who needs it. I'll see you in the next one.